All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Tom, and on behalf of OPNoobs and in partnership with my site, Refined Geekery, I'd like to introduce the two devs that we have with us for our Streaming with the Devs session. These are Kristian Andrews and Sam Chester from Owlbear Studios. Welcome,
Hi,
guys.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I'd like to explain actually how I first came across Kristian, which is really cool, just to set some context up. On Refined Geekery, we have this little section that we call Short Film Fridays, and we highlighted this one short film called Let's Play Nomad X. And it was a really unique short film that took the Let's Play theme and turned it into this awesome narrative about heartbreak and relationships, and all overlaid on this, cool space sim, low polygon, 90s-esque video game. And it just, I thought it was such a cool and unique idea. And then to find out that you guys actually made a video game, that's just the coolest thing in the world to me. So I welcome you both.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I think I'd like to start off just by allowing you two to introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of background on who you are. We could start with Sam or Kristian.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm Sam Chester. I've been a programmer for about 4 years now, doing normal, boring software as a day job, and then making games on the side. I made a little game about a year ago now called Env, which is a very strange sort of abstract first-person physics platformer thing, which you can find on IndieDB. That's quite an interesting game. And then I hooked up with Kristian again, like you, after seeing Let's Play Nomad X. Thought it was bloody brilliant, so we hooked up after that, and decided to make a game together. And that's
awesome.
That's where we are now.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I kind of made that approach to Sam because of playing some of his games and being totally blown away. And I've kind of been on a bit of a journey where I've come from sort of a filmmaking background, having graduated from the RCA about 8 years ago, the Royal College of Art. I made a lot of animations, and then I started directing commercials at a studio called Studio AKA in London. And I think I've been slowly kind of progressing more and more into this sort of digital shift, and started making 3D films, and Let's Play Nomad X was sort of like this logical progression into this sort of deep-seated desire to start developing video games. And so, yeah, through meeting Sam, it's just been kind of like, a meeting of like minds, and Barbar-ian is the first thing that you'll see from us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Can we just hear a little bit about, like, Owlbear Studios is what you're calling yourselves. Is it just the two of you?
It is at the moment. Thing that you'll see from us.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, I don't know, Owlbear. Can we just hear a little bit about, like, I Googled it and saw a lot of D&D references. Is that where it's coming from?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think like at the start, like when we were planning enemies and stuff, I mean, obviously it's a very sort of D&D focused game in terms of some of the other stuff got in there. I think we just loved, we were considering different things to put on there and make enemies of, and we saw this owlbear. I think Kristian came up with the idea, and it's just, I hadn't seen it before. Like I played D&D a lot, but I'd never seen an owlbear before. It's just a hilarious like combination of things. Just like take an owl and a bear and you mash them together. It's exactly what you expect from an owlbear. So there, it just kind of stuck. And then when we were coming up with names for the little organisation we got, owlbears came up and made sense.
It's really cool. Did you? I guess D&D. I mean, has it been an influence on your lives throughout? I mean, like it's this journey that everybody has to take at some point in time in their nerdy life, but
D&D.
Yeah.
I think speaking for myself, it was a total rite of passage where my uncles would battle against my granddad, who was always the dungeon master, and so I kind of from an early age was really indoctrinated in all of this strange lore, and I suppose in a way kind of took part in it in a way that I didn't necessarily understand because I was so kind of young. But yeah, it's been a massive influence throughout my life, and I guess now making Barbar-ian is sort of like this perfect kind of crystallization of that, and it's just so great to kind of take all of that imaginary world that you enter into with a bunch of like-minded people and sort of make that flesh. And in a way, the whole development process for me has felt very much akin to those old days dungeoneering with my uncles, where you just sort of, you know, I was always doing all the map making and stuff like that. And it's really cool to try and visualize this imaginary world that everybody's kind of existing in. And so I think that, yeah, the development process itself is very akin to that.
Oh, that's really cool.
There's a lot of traps in the development process.
That's true.
Well, Barbar-ian certainly has the dungeon part covered, I think.
Yeah, those dungeons are very big.
Yes. Maybe we should just actually start off by having you guys explain to us what Barbar-ian is.
Who? What? How?
Yeah.
All of that.
Give us the base details. Barbar-ian, I mean, it's a roguelike dungeon crawler, very hard. I guess, yeah. Like, give us what is Barbar-ian to you?
Sam, you go for it first.
Yeah, sure. Well, to me, it's like it's all about the action. It's all about like the incredibly fast-paced, sort of frantic action. I mean, that's why we went with. So we've got this like 1 HP system where everything takes 1 hit to kill, like you and all the enemies and stuff like that. Any traps, anything like that, it's all just 1-hit kills. And that to me is the core. Like as the programmer, as a gameplay programmer, like that's what I've always focused on. This how to get that really frantic action feeling right. So that combined with you know, procedural dungeons, because I think like one of the biggest like gameplay inspirations at least was Hotline Miami, and like the amazing frantic action you get in Hotline Miami. And I thought like my favorite bits of that game were always where your plan broke down and you just had to sort of improvise, and it was all really like improvised. It was really like shaky, and it was really like hard to get a grip on what was going on. And I just thought like, what if you just take that concept further? What if it's all improvisation? You know, you never get time to really plan. It's all just about like the really fast-paced, really brutal action, and then it's sort of like building a game around that supports that structure. So like the fast restarts and the procedural dungeons and stuff like that. That's what the game is to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Kristian, I mean, you came from making a short film about video games, and now you've made a video game. Like, why Barbar-ian?
Well, I think that initially, having made that film, I was so kind of pumped with the idea of why the hell can't Nomad X be a real game? And so I kind of
it's called Frontier Elite.
It's it's already been kickstarted, and we've got Elite Dangerous. It's happened, so there was no need. But for sure, I think I had to kind of shrink the scope a little bit down to something that was achievable, and I for sure knew that I couldn't do it myself. So I reached out to Sam, and luckily his genius allowed us to do this. But certainly the scope is kind of a lot smaller than a project like Let's Play Nomad X would have been had it been a real game. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of the gist of it, and the germ of it was sort of like I had this character that I really thought deserved maybe exploring a little bit more, and I really liked the notion of just sort of boiling down the dungeon crawler to its sort of most bare bone elements. Yeah. And I think
sorry, go on.
Yeah, and I just think that was really kind of our real kind of mission statement with Barbar-ian, that we just wanted to make it as simple as possible, remove all the kind of extraneous clutter on screen, and just make it about pure gameplay and just purely having fun, rather than these kind of elaborate RPG elements that have crept in from from D&D, and so I suppose it's just about kind of like a rediscovery of that initial sort of Gary Gygax D&D source material.
Well, yeah, so I wanted to kind of get into that. The game has a very minimalist style to it. And, I mean, like, nothing clutters the UI at all. It's Barbar-ian and whatever's coming at her, basically.
Sure.
Like the horde coming at her. There's no... And when you attack an enemy, there's no numbers coming off of them. There's no score in the corner. There's no, clock counting down or anything like that.
Yeah,
and even the polygon count is like it's a low polygon art style, right? And so I guess like what drove you to just go for this minimalist style? Like what was the impetus in that?
Well, I think in terms of the low poly stuff, I'm, as I said, I've kind of come on this journey from kind of making 2D hand-drawn films to now just discovering 3D. So the truth of it is I'm just not very good at 3D. So kind of low poly, stuff like that, that's all good with me. I mean, I happen to kind of really dig that style because, I came up on these kind of games like Frontier Elite 2 and all these sort of really low poly 3D things. So, it does strike a chord nostalgically for me. But to be honest, I'm just not very good at 3D. So,
so what about you, Sam? Do you like the low poly?
I love it. As an aesthetic, I just think it's so... I honestly just can't explain what it is about it. It's just so wonderful.
Yeah, well,
it's a strange thing, but it's just something about the simplicity of it, and in some cases at least, like the kind of abstract qualities, the kind of it's like pixel art in that you can with very very low quality, well not low quality, but high quality low pixel art, you can draw so much like the mind just puts together so much that the graphics don't fill in. I think like low poly fills a similar sort of role.
Well, that like even on your Project Greenlight page, you have all of these GIFs of all the or GIFs, sorry, of all the enemy classes and everything. I like they're simple and yet they're very intricate. Like there's a lot of design work that's still going into them, even though it's a low polygon count. Like I love the look of it.
Awesome, I'm glad.
Yeah. So I guess. As we were talking about with Nomad X, where you're talking about Frontier Elite being this big inspiration, I mean, other than D&D being an influence, what are the games, I guess, that are influencing Barbar-ian?
Well, I think for sure, Sam's mentioned Hotline Miami.
Talking about
there's a lot of
Elite
Vlambeer games that kind of fed
other than
into this. I think Super Crate
what
Box
are
was sort of
what are the
one
games,
of
I
my
guess, that are
touchstone kind of inspirations when me and Sam first started talking about this project, because it's that sense of not knowing what's in each individual treasure chest and having to improvise your play style according to what weapon you get kind of just given. You just have to kind of improvise. So those kind of Vlambeer games were up there as well. Yeah, and for sure a lot of the Elder Scrolls games really kind of manifested themselves here. I think that I'm a really frustrated Skyrim player in that I played the shit out of that game, and so much of the combat just feels wrong to me. Like it just doesn't feel right. And
were you playing in third person?
Well, there is that. Yeah, that's always a mistake. But just something about the combat system in that game just felt so unphysical and unbelievable and just wrong to me. Whereas what we've done with Barbar-ian, for all its limitations and hilariousness, I think is kind of much more akin to what would happen if I had a sword. Anyway, yeah. I mean, the amount of times I died in our own game, it's just fucking unbelievable. I don't know.
No, I want to get into that a bit, like the gameplay in general. First, I mean, like it's procedurally generated, as you guys mentioned, which basically means like it's infinitely replayable to a certain extent. I mean, like was that important to you? I mean, like to whatever your patience will allow with a game as hard as it is, it's infinitely replayable. But was replayability something that was really important to you going in, and the procedurally generated issue?
Yeah, I think like I'm personally, like, I just kind of wanted to experiment with that procedural generation system because, like, for as a programmer, it's such an interesting challenge to try and create these things like purely through. I mean, well, not purely through code. Obviously, we have like assets that Kristian's produced, and you sort of assemble them, and then assemble them in the level through code. That's just such an interesting way of dealing with a level in a game. And yeah, I think if you can put the time in initially, then it saves a whole lot of time later down the road when you're not having to build levels constantly. I think there are trade-offs in the layout of things. You can't have a really refined level, but what you can have is an insane number of different permutations of a level, and when you have all these different elements in them, you get just crazy situations that no one really expects. And for us, being able to, I mean, we have to play it a lot, obviously, and if it was the same levels over and over, it would be a combination of both incredibly frustrating, really boring, and also just we'd lose a sense of how the game felt.
I have to say, like, playing the game, there were times when I would go through like multiple deaths without seeing that like gelatinous cube to the point that I would forget about it. And then walk right into it at one point. Like the next time I see it, and just be like, ah!
Yeah.
Cube is the bane of my existence.
Absolutely, completely agree.
The worst geometric shape of all time.
Totally agree.
Yes.
But all right. But on the issue of difficulty, though, I mean, like the game is very hard. In my playing it, I rarely even made it down like to the second layer or dungeon, like where the gate opens and you are able to go into like the second tier.
I think you did well.
Oh yeah. Well, I saw the video you guys posted of the shortest the shortest life ever on a game of Barbar-ian, where the guy lands and he's dead just because
I think that was you, Sam. Actually,
what's that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah.
I
think that happened to me a few times. Like you land and all of a sudden you hear them like screaming, running at you, and I'm like, okay, I'm dead already. This is it. I'll wait for the next one.
That's definitely an achievement that has to be unlocked. Shortest death.
Yeah. But I mean, like, so in that way, hard games are becoming, well, they've certainly had a resurgence. And in a way, I made the comparison before we started with one of the OPNoobs guys that, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like if Diablo and Flappy Bird had a love child, like this is what we have. Like it's an incredibly hard game. And I wondered if you guys had any comments on like why you chose to go in that super hard direction. I mean, like you have one hit point, and if you're hit at all, you'll go flying across the screen and you're dead. Restart.
Yeah. Well, it's basically an inevitable outcome of the things that we wanted to do. Like we wanted to have this incredibly fast-paced action. I think that was like what got Kristian interested in working with me originally was that after I'd watched Let's Play Nomad X, he played a little prototype I'd made. And this prototype was essentially trying to recreate the kind of combat you see in old samurai movies.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen Shogun Assassin.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's a favorite.
No, not Shogun Assassin, but I mean, like, I love old, like, Kurosawa films.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. So, like, the kind of fights you get into in, like, Yojimbo and, Sanjuro.
Seven Samurai and, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always, like, it's one hero against loads of enemies. They're all terrible, but it's still, like, it's one-hit kills.
Yeah.
And, like, that sense of tension, for a video game, like, obviously in a movie, you can make it so the protagonist never dies, and he just seems incredibly badass. But for a game, like, you have to have that possibility for death in order to make it interesting. So we wanted one-hit kills, and this is what happens when you have one-hit kills in a game. So we had to make it, we had to basically make it so that you can restart the game incredibly quickly.
Well, and they just charge at you, too. I mean, like, at least in a samurai duel, like they would circle you, and there's this moment of patience where you apply. Okay, who's going to strike first? Well, this is a mob coming at you. Like it's.
Yeah, totally.
I
So
cannot understate the severity of the difficulty here.
Those goblins have got no fighting etiquette, have they? They're just dumb. Just go for you.
I mean, that's kind of like a situation that just arises out of the source material. Like that prototype I had originally, the enemies did that. They sort of like randomly gathered into a little circle around you, and then one by one would come in so that you could kill them. But it's goblins, you know. They're not going to do that. They just want to run at you, and like it's quite interesting having them being able to just like kite them into traps and stuff like that. It's just quite a fun sort of gameplay thing. So we didn't want to overcomplicate things, basically.
The moment I learned that, okay, no, I really have to be using the dodge,
commando roll.
Yeah, it's because they will like they're like lemmings. They'll just charge into a pit if you guide them that way. But
they're so unbelievably stupid. But yeah, there's something kind of charming about their kind of kamikaze mentality.
Yeah.
Yes. They're honorable goblins to whatever their cause is.
Exactly. Not like those bloody cubes.
The cubes have no honor.
No.
So.
So one thing we touched on earlier is the fact that there is no scoring system. There's no leaderboards or anything like that. Is that anything that you think you might implement later on, or?
Definitely, sort of like a count up of the kind of things you've done during a life, essentially, like how many enemies killed and how many weapons collected and stuff like that. Because I think that's just it's just a fun like summary of the kind of like of your life basically. And after multiple play sessions, you might want to know what your best was and see if you could beat it and stuff like that.
Well,
not going to do. Sorry.
There's also bragging rights.
There's also bragging rights, of course. So I think like we're not going to do an online leaderboard, but we are going to have local leaderboards. Well, not leaderboards, local scoreboards.
Yeah.
So you get a particularly high score, you can take a picture of it and send it to your friends and whatever for bragging rights.
But to keep the UI still very minimalistic, I imagine that's not going to be something that's in your face, or
no, definitely not. No, we'll probably show it in a pause menu or maybe like a summary in the main title screen, something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Pause menu makes sense, doesn't it? Just sort of pop it in there. But I think it's the way the game has evolved has definitely been much more about kind of just that experience, and none of this extraneous kind of gumph that a lot of other games have. This is just sort of fun, it's throwaway, and if you start obsessing too much about stats and scores and stuff, I think you're kind of missing the point.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what we hoped anyway.
Well, I saw on your Project Greenlight page that you have brought up the possibility of multiplayer in the future, or at least Kristian, you did.
Yeah.
In a sort of a silent hush move against Sam's better judgment.
I think he brought it up because he doesn't have to do it. Yeah.
You're driving a wedge between Owlbear here. We've got a funny relationship, me and Sam, where basically I kind of get to do a lot of the fun stuff and just kind of make silly low poly characters, and Sam does all the really hard graft. And then when it comes to publicizing our games, I think I just sort of make all these wild and crazy promises, and and ditch Sam in the shit, as it were. So we'll have to see where we get to with some of these outlandish promises.
I think like certainly a local co-op is certainly something there's always on the cards, because local co-op is not hard to implement and it's a lot of fun. But as soon as you start getting into particularly online stuff, because online multiplayer in terms of like networking does not play well with physics, and this game relies heavily on physics. So online multiplayer is off the cards like completely, but local is definitely on. It's just a question of then like how far do you go into it? Are we going to have special game modes? Is it going to be competitive, cooperative, etc., etc.?
Team killing.
Yeah, exactly.
One hit point.
Capture the flag.
Yeah, exactly. Like it could be really cool, but it's on the cards.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So then let's get into a few things. The sound.
Sure.
You once keeping with the minimalist theme, there's no score or soundtrack. And I'm just wondering if there's reason behind this.
Well, it's something that we've certainly explored, and we've got kind of friends who are in some really interesting bands and stuff like that. But just in terms of the sheer replayability of this thing, we've kind of elected for the option of just going with a purely sound effects based score and allowing people to kind of make their own music selection to accompany their dungeoneering.
I was kind of disappointed that we weren't getting your rendition of O Fortuna, though. Like, I was kind of hoping that was going to be my battle cry as like I was playing along.
I really don't think you would hope that if you've been playing for an hour. I think you get very sick of that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of relieved people out there, judging by the amount of hate we were getting when we first released that video.
Well, it reminded me of there was this game for like the Xbox 360 at like the indie channel days called I Made a Game with Zombies in It, and like throughout it the game designer just had this song where he's singing about how he made a game with zombies in it, and it's just a twin stick shooter, and I mean like it was very self-effacing, very self-aware, and the one thing I got from that trailer where you did that was that you guys were being very self-aware. You're kind of being silly. Like, do you see this, like, as much as it's a passion project for you, do you see it as a silly game as well? Like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course, yeah.
look at the title.
Yeah.
Who would waste like 7 months of their life on a passion project with such a stupid pun at the sort of base of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the character as well. Just everything about it. It's just silly.
Yeah. But that song, I mean, like, I was thinking, like, even though it's not, in the game, like, I was humming it in my head, like, at least even, like, the original, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Excalibur, but where they're, marching out to O Fortuna, and that was me marching off to my certain death.
Well, maybe it could make a little appearance in the just in the start screen potentially. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the start screen it'd work really well. I think possibly just have an option to turn it on during a playthrough.
Yeah.
Have it off by default so it doesn't piss people off. Then turn it on.
If you complete the game, it's an unlockable Easter egg.
I think that'd work well.
Well, like, going on that, Jim Sterling showed your video on his YouTube page.
Yeah.
It kind of took the piss out of the song a bit, but like, are you enjoying the sort of notoriety, the publicity you're getting through that trailer?
Oh, I mean, we couldn't have asked for much of a better launch in terms of what Jim did with the video.
Yeah.
I think it's great that he did that. I think that taking the piss out of us in that video is like shooting fish in a barrel, but no, we're very grateful to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like he made it probably within 24 hours of us posting up the green light.
Yeah.
It was up on his page, so that was bloody impressive, I have to say.
So the Project Greenlight process, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about that. The game went up on Steam's Project Greenlight on February 14th, Valentine's Day. How have you found the Greenlight process?
It's a very interesting question. I don't know. It's I kind of see its importance, its necessity to Valve, but it's very, very difficult. It's very you have to do a lot of reading around the topic to understand why it is the way it is and why your game is in the position it's in, essentially.
Yeah.
I think like there's a lot of pitfalls. I mean, just after we joined, Valve released a little discussion on the Greenlight page about how games that were doing key giveaways to people who voted for the game, Valve frowned upon that essentially because they didn't view it as genuine interest in the game because essentially you're promising keys for votes, you're promising free game for the votes.
Yeah.
And so there are obviously a lot of games that do this. and they're doing very, very well. They get greenlit very quickly because they get a whole lot of attention. And yet, you know, Valve is saying don't do it. So it's kind of it's just a very strange system. It's very unreadable, I would say. Is the comment I would give.
It also, I mean, like, it exposes you to the public, like, while you're still kind of developing the game, including like public scrutiny. And I guess is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's definitely a good thing. I think, like, I don't know, had we had this experience before, we probably would have put it up a lot earlier. Because it takes time to build up those votes and stuff like that. But absolutely, I mean, the more people that view your game, the better off you are. Like, there's no limits to that. Just absolutely everyone that can see your game. It's always important. So yeah, that exposure is really, really good.
But I mean, like, they also like to throw out a lot of ideas. They like to improve your game for you.
Yes.
In a way. And I'm just wondering how you balance listening to, like, you know, the feedback of, you know, players or potential players, and also making the game that you want to make.
Well, I think it's such a valuable process, and like having all of those suggestions, even ones that you don't necessarily get or you don't agree with. I think it just totally galvanizes your position and makes you realize, no, I know the game that we're trying to make. And when people sort of start to ask for alternate attacks and health bars and things like that, it really just sort of like, focuses you on the game that you're trying to make. And obviously it's great to kind of temper that with an awareness of, you know, what the market expects and what they want. But yeah, it's sort of this design process that your kind of end user is sort of involved with along the way. So yeah, I think it's great. It's almost like a little kind of focus group, and you can kind of identify key little sort of niches out there amongst the market of who you're kind of trying to appeal to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great. It's just it's a bubbling pot of ideas that, you know, we can kind of pick and choose which ones we listen to, and at the same time, it's a big, great melting pot of trolling and insults and all sorts of fun and games as well.
Well, it is the internet.
Very true that.
So I mean, this question is a little directed at Kristian, but as a game designer and a filmmaker, I just, not to mention, I mean, I was on your webpage, I saw that you're also a pretty awesome illustrator. Just, can you explain how the filmmaking process, or the filmmaking and the development process sort of compare on the creative side?
Well, that's a really tricky comparison to make. I mean,
and yet we always want our games to be more cinematic, and we want our games, like, there's people who view this like melding of the worlds, but Barbar-ian is not really a cinematic game. From a filmmaker, it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, and for sure, Sam owes a huge amount of responsibility for that. I think that I definitely have to kind of put on and take off my kind of filmmaker's hat when there's sort of like a moment where, as a film director, you would want to kind of put the player on rails. You absolutely have to resist that. And so I think I've sort of viewed this project much more as a sort of a learning process, where I've not been so interested in sort of like those traditional things that would have really kind of got me going, like kind of narrative and anything like that. You know, we're not necessarily explaining the story behind why Barbar-ian's roaming around these dungeons, except to say that, you know, that's what barbarians do. But yeah, for sure, I think there's these two design processes are worlds apart, whereas in a film you just kind of feel like you're constantly chipping away and refining and getting to that kind of that sort of concise message. With game design, you're kind of constantly adding elements, and each element a new asset that you add. You know, we found this with all of the enemies that we implemented. They just completely off balance the whole thing. So it's much more of a balancing act, where the game that you're trying to make changes each time you're implementing each thing. Whereas I feel like with a film, it's a little bit more of a linear process where you go from sort of like a storyboard to an animatic to sort of blocking out scenes of animation, and you're kind of always building towards that final kind of kernel of truth. Whereas with a game, you're just sort of presenting this playground of components that people can use as they wish, and you have to really resist that filmmaker's urge to kind of show them around this playground in the way that you would want them to view it. So it's just non-linear.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I was reading your interview on Short of the Week when Nomad X was released. Shortoftheweek.com. Shout out to them. And you kind of you labeled yourself as a frustrated game designer at the time, and you were just a filmmaker. But you said, like, at the heart, to quote you, you said you're both fascinated and appalled by video games. And I'm just wondering, now that you've made a video game, like, where are your feelings with video games on the design level?
Yeah, I obviously I've got a kind of a strange relationship with them. Like, it's kind of a little bit love-hate, I guess. And it's been really interesting working with Sam, because I think he's a love computer games man. And I suppose I'm always a little bit wary of the impact that personally my gaming could have on, like, my relationship and my friends and things like that. And it's sort of like this, I don't know, this dirty secret that I sometimes indulge, but I have to always pinch myself and remind myself to, get on and do sort of, this sounds so stupid. I have to pinch, I was going to say is I have to pinch myself, remind myself to do something productive, but it's totally legitimate to indulge in an art form like computer games, and use that as a means of entertainment and relaxation. That's totally fine. But then at the same time, I'm having this conversation and I'm sort of torn, because I kind of feel like, why am I playing someone else's computer game when I could be making one, when I could be making a film? It's all that kind of thing.
No, that makes sense. So, I mean, we're running pretty long, so I just want to get into some final thoughts here. And I mean, I wondered if maybe you guys had some thoughts on just even, like, the current environment of, like, indie game development. There are so many new titles out there almost every week. And as developers, I'm just wondering, how do you compete for what is really, like, a finite amount of attention out there?
Sure.
You guys want to succeed. You want to be out there. How do you do that?
I think you just got to use every single tool at your disposal. I mean, it's an insanely competitive environment, and that's invigorating, and it's amazing to be part of that. But what I'm finding at the moment, I'm going to be in attendance at EGX just next weekend, and it's all about kind of trying to grab people's attention. So as a result, I'm going to actually dress up in cosplay as Barbar-ian and roll along with my foam hammer and smash some heads.
Will you be there as well, Sam?
I won't, sadly. No, I've got other engagements. I wish I could. Absolutely wish I could. It's going to be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think he's embarrassed.
Kristian compromise himself in such a way. It would just be wonderful.
No need to be embarrassed, Sam.
I'm not embarrassed. I'm full of glee.
I'm embarrassed. I'm going to be so embarrassed.
But do you have any thoughts on that, Sam? I mean, this isn't your first game, as you mentioned. Like, how do you compete out there?
Well, basically one of two ways. Either you've always got to do a hell of a lot of promotion, and I'll get to that, but you either make a very, very, very interesting game in a very unusual game that has a unique, something really unique about it, or you have to be creative with the way you market it, I think. So like Barbar-ian, we've got this gameplay that no one else is really focusing on. We've got this really stripped down aesthetic. We've got this 1 HP hit point system. But at the end of the day, it's procedural dungeon crawler, and there are a lot of them out there, right? So we had to get creative with promotion. That's why we ended up doing the singing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, you know, you make a trailer and, as you say, like, there are so many games releasing all the time, and particularly on Greenlight, like, there's so many being on there all the time. You know, you gotta have something worth talking about. And if that's not how crazy the game itself is, then it's how crazy the marketing is, or something like that. You know, it's a slightly cynical approach to it, I know, but it's what you got to do. Like, you got to get attention.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and in that regard, things like that Jim Sterling video are just icing on the cake.
Exactly. I mean, if we didn't do a weird trailer where we sang "O Fortuna" with their own lyrics to it, Jim Sterling would never have made a video about it, and we probably wouldn't be doing a stream now. So.
Well, you had beautiful singing voices, especially that last hanging note. I don't know which one of those was.
That'll be Kristian.
That was Kristian. Yeah.
I was laughing at the time, so.
You held on to that really, really well.
Yeah, there were people actually at the studio underneath, working the floor below, and yeah, they were very disturbed by the noises they were hearing through the floor.
That was an embarrassing walk out of the building, I have to say.
Okay, so Barbar-ian is currently in beta. Is that fair to say?
Right.
I mean, like, so you're in the Greenlight process right now, but is there a timetable to a full release?
Currently, we're aiming for the beginning of April.
Yeah.
It's not set in stone. I mean, Greenlight, either we get on or we don't in that time. We'll definitely be releasing on itch.io.
Yeah.
Potentially to Zero if we can get on there. And, you know, Steam whenever it happens, basically.
Okay. That's really cool. All right. Well, I mean, this was an awesome conversation. I thank you guys for coming out. I urge everybody to check out their Project Greenlight page and give it the yes, I will play this game, or yes, I will buy this game little nod. And yeah, I wish you guys both the best of luck. I also urge everybody to check out Let's Play Nomad X. It's an awesome short. And if you want to check it out on Refined Geekery, that's always cool too. But yeah, I thank you both. I urge everybody to check out OPNoobs.com, check out RefinedGeekery.com, go to OPNoobs, apply to be a member, and keep checking out our Twitch streams, keep checking out all of our content. We do these streamings with the devs every once in a while, and they're really cool. This was totally enlightening. And guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's really fun.
All right. Well, like I said, best of luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. It was an awesome game. Awesome game.
Thank you. Yeah.